to bring into the conversation our friend, legal analyst and former federal prosecutor, Neama Rahmani. He joins me. Neama, good to see you here. I guess I got to ask, my first question to you is this. Have you ever seen a sustained effort by any presidential administration to go after these top dollar white shoe law firms like Skadden today? Skadden's, I believe, the world's biggest law firm, and a lot of these are very prominent. A lot of them, yes, have taken on work that has involved the former president, then candidate Trump, now President Trump here. Have you ever seen it?
Andrew, I've never seen anything like this. And I worked at a couple of these big law firms, O'Melveny and Myers and Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, who were on opposite sides of Bush v. Gore. So this is something that we have never seen. And obviously, you have two different schools of thought. You have Perkins Coie, who was the first to fight back. And then you have Paul Weiss, who really entered into the first settlement, which may have made business sense, but they've been getting absolutely destroyed in the legal community for not fighting back. Now you have Skadden, probably one of the biggest and certainly most prestigious law firms that has entered into a similar settlement. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of fallout they have, where you have two other firms today, WilmerHale and Jenner & Block, who have also decided to fight back. So two very different legal strategies. It's going to be interesting to see what happens both inside the courtroom, but outside the courtroom as well with respect to their clients and lawyers.
So, we've been covering the flurry of executive orders that President Trump has signed since he took office. He's been in office for now more than 2 months. What I hadn't seen with these executive orders that we saw there with the action targeting the major law firm Paul Weiss, the Trump administration reversing their own executive order after, frankly, Paul Weiss caved. Now you have these law firms like Paul Weiss and also like Skadden offering to do pro bono work to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. How is that good for the law firm's business?
Well, these law firms do pro bono work because oftentimes they represent corporations against the little guy, and they develop some bad press. They also do white collar criminal defense. So this is their way of giving back to the community. The question is working for the Trump administration really giving back to the community? I guess it depends on what's the nature of this pro bono work. Is it really to help veterans? Is it really to combat anti-Semitism? Obviously, two very important goals, but oftentimes the pro bono work that I was doing was really for indigent individuals, people who couldn't afford legal services on their own.
Okay, I want to talk about some of the individuals that are being targeted because of their work with these law firms. Some of these individuals aren't even with these firms anymore. I'm talking about Bob Mueller. He worked at WilmerHale from 1993 to 1995 before it merged to create WilmerHale. He later rejoined in 2014 as a partner before his appointment as special counsel in 2017. Obviously, that investigation infuriated Trump. Trump repeatedly refers to that investigation as the Russia hoax, as a witch hunt, as the Russian collusion hoax. The executive order said Mueller's investigation epitomizes the weaponization of government. Now, if a presidential executive order is going to go after a law firm, which the prime individual, the principal individual targeted in the executive order doesn't even work for the firm anymore, what's the point?
I don't know what the point is, Andrew, except to enact revenge against the law firm, because these law firms, they're massive, they're international, they have offices all over. People come and go, they leave firms, they take their book of business, they go work for the government, certain administrations. Obviously, a new president comes in, they end up leaving. It's not like a small firm that ends up targeting or just going after just a particular president or his administration. They have thousands of clients representing all sorts of varied interests. So Trump targeting a firm, whether it's WilmerHale or any of these other firms, because of one individual, whether they're there or not, doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless Trump is trying to send a message. And let's be real. He continues to win both politically and now legally because there are firms that are now afraid to do anything against Donald Trump and his administration. So it certainly has a chilling effect But if you think,
Okay.
Andrew, you're a lawyer, you go to law school because you want to litigate and you want to fight. And if you're going to back down from a fight as a lawyer, should you really be practicing law?
Okay, but I want to get into one of the facets of some of these law firms, frankly, who caved, like Paul Weiss and now like Skadden here. It's not just pro bono work for whatever to the tune of $50 million or $100 million. It's pro bono work defending the Trump administration and their actions. That's how I'm reading this here. That's novel and that's new, is it not?
It is novel and it is new and not what they typically do. Obviously, the government has the Department of Justice who defends the
Yeah.
government. They don't need these big law firms. Now, obviously, the government is getting sued a lot recently because they're pushing the limits and
Yeah.
they're testing the legal boundaries. But it seems strange to have Skadden Arps or Paul Weiss defending the government in these types of cases when you have career lawyers at the DOJ whose job it is to do this.
I mean, it does seem like, to your point, this is somewhat of Trump's strategy that we have seen played out for the last, 2.5 months now. An eye for an eye, a hand for a hand, kind of going into this retributive notion of how he is going to get back at some of these individuals, frankly, who have wronged him in the legal sphere, in the courtroom here. And I have to ask, this is more of like a moral question, Neama. If you're working for one of these law firms that, basically accepted the premise that, yes, we'll do this pro bono work in order to escape the crosshairs of the Trump administration, do you stay at the firm? Do you still work for it?
There are a lot of lawyers that are looking to leave these firms, and you see posts on social media and anything from Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, where they are ashamed of their law firm. The fact that they capitulated. You have clients at these firms saying that if the law firm isn't willing to stand up for themselves as a firm and they're going to cave like this, do I want them representing my company in a bet the company litigation? So I think the fallout from this is going to be significant. And look, let's be real. Donald Trump is very likely not going to be president 4 years from now, absent some constitutional amendment or something extraordinary. So I think the long lasting reputational harm to these firms, the lawyers they're going to lose, the clients that they're going to lose for something so short sighted to appease the president for the next few years is a business mistake, in my opinion.
Okay, I want to talk, though, about now these firms that are fighting. That did not, quote unquote, cave here. You have Jenner and Block and Wilmer Hale filing these separate lawsuits. Do they have good prospects on First Amendment grounds here? Can they allege, can they argue that a White House is going after them for the work that they did? Maybe not even the work that they did, but the people that they hired to do that work.
I think they do, Andrew, and they have a few arguments. Wilmer Hale, for instance, hired Paul Clement, the former Bush Solicitor General, obviously very well respected in conservative legal circles. He was tapped by Judge Ho to analyze whether the Department of Justice's dismissal of Eric Adams was appropriate. So here are the three primary arguments they're making, and you touched upon one of them, which is a First Amendment argument, which of course not only is freedom of speech, but freedom of association. So they're saying that the government is punishing them for speaking out on behalf of their clients. Then you have a Fifth Amendment argument that this is all arbitrary, capricious. They're being denied security clearances, access to government buildings without any due process whatsoever. And then you have a Sixth Amendment, the right to counsel argument. Everyone's entitled to a lawyer. It doesn't matter if you're a former special counsel like Mueller or Jack Smith. That's the bedrock of our legal system. As a prosecutor, I never got upset because the people I was prosecuting had a government appointed lawyer. That's how our system works. So I think they're very strong arguments, at least in the Perkins Coie case. Judge Howell in DC has sided with that firm. So I think that they're likely going to win. And I can't see even the conservative Supreme Court liking this kind of conduct that's targeting the judiciary and their profession.
Okay, but Neama, what do you say to many in President Trump's orbit? These firms had it coming. They engaged in lawfare against the president, against then candidate Trump. These individuals that are very familiar to all of us by now, Andrew Weissman, Robert Mueller, also Mark Elias there at Perkins Coie, and others. who are quote unquote members of the resistance fighting against Trump at every turn here. What do you say to those in the MAGA universe who say they had it coming?
Well, if you don't like what's happening in the courtroom, win in the courtroom. And Trump lost in New York in the hush money case, but really nothing came of it. He had the classified documents case dismissed. His lawyers did an outstanding job there. And the other two cases were, well, the DC election fraud case was dismissed when Trump became president. I think the Georgia case will be dismissed. So, look, Trump won in the courtroom on presidential immunity, on Jack Smith's appointment being unconstitutional. So, if you have a legal argument, that's what judges and juries are for. You shouldn't go after your legal adversaries in this way. We have a system where disputes are supposed to be resolved in the courtroom, not by executive order or fiat.
You know, if this does get further in the courts, these lawsuits these firms have brought against the Trump administration, can you see a federal judge dismissing them?
The lawsuits challenging the executive order? I don't think so, because
Okay.
these firms have standing, they have been damaged, and they have a right to present their case. And I expect even conservative justices are going to take issue with what Donald Trump is doing. Look, we have the chief justice who came out in support of Judge Boasberg
Yeah.
in the Venezuela deportation cases. So this is something that I think is a winning case. Now, I understand that the business reasons why Skadden and Paul Weiss might not want to deal with this, and they're probably thinking, well, if I, donate, this many pro bono hours, I can avoid a public and protracted litigation against Donald Trump. But I think these are winnable cases, Andrew. And I think
Okay.
regardless of a liberal or conservative judge, they're not going to like lawyers and law firms being targeted simply because of who they represent.
All right. Neama Rahmani, we're going to have to leave it at that. What a great conversation. Hope you have a good weekend. We'll talk soon.